Hello once again. Today is Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. This is recording 481. Our numbers got a little off back at 479, and since then two offerings have been put on there. So in case you're wondering, you can go here 479 and 480, and I think 479 it's called 480, but it's really 479. Today's offering is called When All is Enough. When all is enough. And my thinking of how we have lived on the planet, the moment you hear someone say, I want it all, you immediately start thinking about greed. You start thinking that person wants it all, they don't want to share any. And yet, we come to find out, as I was having a discussion with my wife yesterday, and I said, we're both saying the same thing. And she said, we may be meaning the same thing, but we're not saying the same thing. And that's what kind of stopped me because of how people interpret situations or words. You may think that you're saying this when in actuality the person is hearing something else, and you're saying, but that's what I just said. And they're saying, no, that isn't what you said. You said blah, 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 blah. You may have meant this, but this is what you said. So my thing today is when all is enough. And then I back it up with saying, I want it all. Sounds, like I said, sounds greedy, doesn't it? Who would want all of anything and not share? Who would want that? Well, a selfish person. A person who wants it all. There are some people in the world today, there are countries that would want to blow up other countries so they can have it all. I want it all. So the thing that we need to understand is, what do we mean, and where is our conscience or our understanding going to lead us in this wanting it all? What does all mean to you? Do you want to share? Would you like people to know that you have all and you are willing to share all with them? Because the scriptures tell us that should we possess all and give it away, then all would continue to come to us because of the flow. Now, that's a hard thing for today's person to digest. Being able to believe that they can have it all and yet share. When the world believes that we have to dig, we have to get whatever it is that we can get to take care of ourselves. There was a psalmist in Psalm 17, and he voiced his desire without hesitation. He voiced a desire that in righteousness he would see God's face and be satisfied that his achievement would result in him taking on the likeness of God. Now, as we look at our Judo-evangelical Christian world, that's not too much of a desire, but it's the meaning behind the desire where we get into trouble and start stumbling. Because we believe that we can be the Son of God, but we cannot have the powers of the Son of God. We believe that we can speak to the mountain, but we need the Savior to come and move the mountain. We believe that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, but for some strange reason, I don't have my 40 acres and a mule. We believe that evil has nothing to do with us, and yet we sit back and devise all types of offenses and defenses to protect ourselves. But the psalmist said, my desire is that I would awaken and see God's face and be satisfied with his likeness. Now, the scriptures tell us that the Spirit of the Lord is everywhere. There's no place where it is not. It doesn't say that there is a portion of God's Spirit, a piece of God's Spirit, or a measure. It says the fullness of God is wherever the Spirit of the Lord is. So that right there, I'm digging. That right there should be telling us that when I touch the hem of his garment, seeing in our thinking, where did the lady touch? She touched a fringe, a piece of God. And yet, God felt his fullness flow out. Who touched me? You see, our conscience has to come to a place where we realize that any touch is a full touch. A full touch receives the allness of God. So what would your life be if you had the allness of God? Wow. You would have all, and all would be enough, wouldn't it? How much of God do you want? I want all. Well, if you want all, that means that you are going to, in a manner of speaking, go off for times and seasons and be by yourself and contemplate the allness of God being where you are. There's no need to ask God to come and fill that space, because the scriptures have already told you that the allness of God is everywhere, and there is no place where his fullness is not. What would that mean to your heart if you fully understood that the fullness of God is wherever you are? What then would you ask for? Nothing. Now, look at how far you may believe that you are away from that, and that's the distance. That is the death that we need to overcome. I was just sitting here talking to Rodney, and I was thinking about the hypnotism. This world is so hypnotized, that it is no wonder that any good measure of God is able to penetrate and do anything. And even when it does, think about it. Even when it does, everybody goes to jumping and screaming and witnessing and whatnot, and next week they've totally forgotten and they vaguely can remember the miracle. We are not miracle workers. God is not a miracle worker. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is full liberty. This is the contemplation that we take. Lord, I want it all. I shall not be satisfied, or I shall be satisfied when I awaken with thy likeness. This is not a sleep in a bed. This is that bing that goes on when I awaken. Then with what intent or with what measure of pursuit are we going after having all? And then what is it that we expect to gain when we get it? Do we believe that when we get the allness of God that now we got cars and we got boats, we got planes, we can do whatever we want to do? Well, I can't say much for the other teachings of the world, but I will say that the one that I am setting forward, you're not going to get that. Because when you find God, you will have gotten all. You will have found all. You would have attained all, and therefore you will have nothing to ask for except thy will be done. Can we put ourselves in a position to where we simply accept the fact that that which created us has a purpose and a design, and we won't move except it be done in us? Wow. That brand new Cadillac I saw yesterday, but that dude was feisty. I could just see it. Can you pull back and say, okay, Lord, thy will be done? When we begin to look at Jesus' life and see that he never, ever walked around, asking for the best of anything, and yet he said the Father brings forth the things that are necessary according to the purpose and the design that he made us in. In a world where harmony is described and pursued by various avenues and modes, there is much to consider. Are you willing to give up all to be happy? Are you willing? Are you willing to give up the smiles? Are you willing to give up the Christmas presents? Are you willing to give up the family reunions? Are you willing to give up you get it? Are you willing to give up those to have the likeness, the fullness of God as your presence? Wow. Some believe riches is the answer. Some deem power to be absolute harmony. Can one actually believe and achieve something so fantastic as to display the identity that declares the likeness of the Almighty? Can it be done? Guess who the only one that can prove that it can be done is? You got it. Because you will not find very many people that are going to want to walk that path. The moment that you say, Jesus made himself equal with God. I'm quoting scripture. He thought it not robbery to be equal with God. He made himself as God. Can you imagine whispering that into your best friend's ear and waiting for the reaction when they turn and look at you? It's not even something you can talk about. As I said on at least the last 3 recordings, I wouldn't be saying these things if I was not pressed at these services. Why? Because I now know that the ear is so hypnotized in this world that it believes everything it sees, hears, tastes, touches, smells. It has locked itself in, and if you dare tell somebody that you're leaving that world, but you're going to stay in it, they're going to think you start raving mad. And your heart is simply saying what? I want to go home. I want it all. No, but you ain't got to go like that. Well, I don't know any other way to go. Why? Because when I awake with the likeness of God, who's going to recognize me? How can if I walk down the street, are people going to look and say, oh, there goes God? No, I'm going to look just like they look. And yet within me would be an understanding that would lay the life down to help that person. And yet they would think you strange. All of the holy men and women have stated that no one would achieve true peace and harmony until they overcome what they call the second death. I'm reminded of Elisha and his servant. And his servant is standing there shaking like a leaf on a tree. And Elisha looks and says, there'll be more with us than be with them. How could he say such a thing except some movement within his conscience move him to the point where he's not afraid? He's not asking God to come and protect them. He's not asking God to stop the enemy. He simply says what? Lord, open his eyes that he might see what I see. Now, it looks as though he asked some grand power to come and do something, but he was only speaking from within himself that he knew, that he knew, that he knew. And he wanted his servant to be at peace. He could have even put those soldiers at peace. He could have extended his conscience and say, open their eyes. And it says the servant's eyes were open, and they saw all of the chariots all around. And yet, he didn't use any. He only used what? He used the words. He was overcoming the second death. He was overcoming the death that our friends and neighbors are walking around in right now. Dead, walking around and believing that they are serving the Most High God. How do you know that that's what they believe? One, they go to church. And two, they speak that rhetoric in the street. Three, they judge with confidence as though they don't have a speck of dust or dirt in their life. And they'll tell you right quickly, so-and-so needs to go to hell. And yet, when you read the scriptures, you'll find that God is never advocating sending someone to hell. He's always saying, I saw you when you did this. I saw you when you did that. If you do this, if you do that, I will forgive you. I will wipe you clean. And yet, we don't get it. Why? Because we don't want all. What do we want? Revenge. It's like a tombstone. We want revenge. Why? For being born. Well, how come we don't take out our revenge on God? Why do we take it out? Why do we take it out on everyone else? But that's a whole different story. I know a man that counts his pennies so much that he counts the pennies and counts the pennies and counts the pennies, and this man's got millions of dollars. Why does he not realize that he is going to die and leave those millions here? How do I know he's going to die? Because he's my age. He's 70 years old. Okay? He's got millions of dollars. You think he's going to suddenly just start spending all the way down to his Social Security check? No. Why? Because he's hypnotized. He's hypnotized into thinking that money is security. But it's not, because he's going to leave every penny here. Every one of them. He's not even going to be able to argue. Am I saying don't save? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, how much is enough? 380 billion, 980 billion. How much is enough? Wow. These people deemed earthly riches and power to be nothing in comparison to the riches and power of knowing the one who is creator of all. Now, I'm back with Elisha now. The holy men, the holy women that lived before us. They saw that the treasure that was to be laid up was the likeness of God. Now, the likeness of God is not something that you look like, okay? The likeness of God is an internal knowing. And when you come to the place where you devalue everything that this world has in front of you, and I realize what I just said, you're going to make a lot of people mad. You're going to hurt a lot of people. You're going to offend a lot of people. Not meaning to, but because you have seen something that you know is the correct way to go. And unfortunately, many of these, they're just not ready to walk that path. As I stated, those who follow after God, they have found that the only power is knowing the Creator of all. To achieve this feat, all would certainly be enough. They cautioned that there would be many trials and tribulations besetting those that undertake this journey. But with faith and courage, all would arrive at the destinies of peace and harmonies. I had a thought today. I'm just going to chase a rabbit for a little bit. That what would our lives be like if we learned God the correct way? Think about it. See, it's not our fault that we're in the shape we're in. It's because we were taught. We were hypnotized from birth. But what if you and I had the opportunity to learn of God? Can you see now how different your life would be? This is what we call ourselves doing right now. It's coming away from that world while we're still trying to maintain friendships and relationships and possessions and all that. But the bottom line is what? They said, leave all and follow me. Come unto me. We have to make a decision of what all is. We have to come to a conclusion that there is something beyond this visible world that we're living in, and that this visible world, here I go, y'all, has no value. I know how hard that is to stomach, but the value is in the invisible world, and you would give your all in all to accomplish the understanding and wisdom and knowledge of the invisible world, because that's where the value is, and that's how you will help your fellow man. So what is our purpose? Well, I can't for sure just say this is the only purpose. But right now, the purpose is not for me to save my family, not for me to save my friends, not for me to stop wars, and not for me to stop what? It's to stop all that in me. That is my purpose right now. And if there is something beyond that, then so be it. And if there is nothing beyond that, then so be it. And when I mean nothing, I mean if I'm not going to be asked to do anything, so be it. It's the freedom of knowing that what God has for us, and the only way that we're going to know what God has for us is God has to show it. We cannot go and memorize all of this stuff and practice all this stuff so we can go out and do stuff. Can't do it. It has to be the awakening. And the awakening, just like the seed of a tree or a flower or a plant, just like that seed has that full-grown intelligence within it, we need to understand that we have that same intelligence. When a man, this came to me, is when a man can say, I am God, okay, without any ego. When a man can say that instead of God is man. See, people can accept the fact of you saying God is man in the grand scheme, but they cannot accept man is God. But when you can mesh the two together and realize one and the same, you would never speak this in front of the unconditioned hearing. Why? Because you'd be talking to Pilate, and he would not understand. God is man. There's one life on this planet, one wholeness, one completeness, and there is no other. If God is man, then what can man be other than God? Now we throw away what we have been taught man is, and we realize you may be using two different phrases, but you're saying the same thing. Unfortunately, most aspirants interpret the journey as one of material exploits and experiences, never fully arriving at the so-cherished goal. Yes, the journey is fraught with many emotional distresses and tensions, but somewhere along the way, it should be realized that these events are with oneself and not those that appear to be obstacles in our path. In other words, the battles that you are having are within you. Ugly stuff is happening out here. But the moment we personalize it, that it happened to me, we're off the rail. And even though we have to go through material situations and whatnot to seemingly fix that, the bottom line is, what are you thinking? What are you thinking when you're trying to correct that situation? I got to do this. Who gonna help me? And it's hard not to entertain that thought, because it has to come. Why? Because you've been trained. The hypnotism is all around you, whereas God said what? Be still and know. But I'm doing that. What did God say? Be still and know. You know, I told my wife yesterday, I said, the God that we were trained to believe in, if that God really existed, we wouldn't be going through all the stuff we're going through. Think about it. There has to be something else. We must have been mistaught or mistold something, because that God said he loved me. He said that if I gave up all of the ugly stuff in this world, he would be in my house. And even, where are you at? You see what I'm saying? We have got to come to that place where we realize that people are just out here high-stepping and high-jumping. They're talking loud and saying nothing. And you can't tell them, because they're hypnotized. They're hypnotized into thinking that they're on their way to glory. You can't go to glory dragging somebody. Wow. The battle is the overcoming of one's preconceived ideas of truth and allowing them to be replaced with truth that will never fail. Blessed is the man that overcomes the second death, for he shall receive a new name which I shall put in his forehead. Come on. We cannot have a split identity. It says he shall receive a new name which I shall put. If God puts a name in your forehead, he's talking about your conscience. What name can he put there but Christ, Savior, Emmanuel, Israel? What name can he put there? That's all he owns. Wow. But you have to overcome what? The second death. How many people do you actually see out here trying to be born again? They're not. They accepted the fact that somebody told them that they were born again because they prayed a certain prayer and they went through a certain ritual, or they walk a certain way, they talk a certain way, they keep to these rules, and they think they have a born again diploma. But God said, when you're born again, you see the kingdom. When you see the kingdom, I'm going to place a new name. That means he's trusting you, like we talked about this past Sunday. The beginning of any relationship has to start with trust. I don't know you, so we need to trust one another. And as I begin to trust you, then that trust turns into a friendship where I can confide and tell you my most secretive secrets, and you're my friend. But if the trust is not found in the beginning, you don't have a friendship. The name that God places in our conscience, what name can he give us that would not declare his likeness? See? Whatever God gives you is the fullness of what God is. If God touches your body, he touched you with his fullness. If God touches your conscience, he touched you with his fullness. If God caused a situation to be in your favor, he touched it with his fullness. He cannot touch in part. He has to give all. So when is all enough? When we seek with the whole heart. Didn't say a part of it, right? When we seek with the whole heart. The name Israel was given to Jacob. From that occasion, a nation was born. And we automatically believe that those people across the water are the nation of Israel. They are not. The nation of Israel is the one who has had that sacred ceremony to where their name, he placed a new name in Jacob's forehead. It didn't matter that Jacob may have made mistakes again after that, but Jacob had seen enough. The ceremony was enough for God to give him his all. And when God gave him his all, did he not stay with Jacob? Stayed with him? No matter what Jacob did, he stayed with him. Why? Because Jacob had been able to see the kingdom. The name Ishwa was placed in the embodiment we call Jesus, the Son of God. What name but one declaring his approval can he bestow that is unlike or similar to his likeness? Done. When he placed that name in Jesus, he placed all of him in Jesus. For Jesus declared upon approval that when you see me, you see the likeness of him that sent me. Now, had he not said that, no one would have known. They would have kept calling him what? Jesus Bar Joseph. Jesus, son of Mary and Joseph. But he opened his mouth and said, when you see me, what are you looking at? The likeness of the Father, the fullness of his fullness have we all received. That's what Paul said. That's what Peter said, of his fullness, not a portion, but how ardent are we seeking the realization of this? One man said to seek the spirit of the consciousness of the Spirit of God is the realization of heaven. How do you seek the spirit of the consciousness of God? With a whole heart. When? As often as you can. All is enough. How much do you want? I want all. I want it all. I used to want it so people would recognize me as being someone special. No. I want it all that I might know I have it all. What is all? All is the death of my consciousness and the adorning of the greatest consciousness intelligence in the world. Son, thou art always with me, and all that I have is thine, or within the power to access. I am never beyond reach, says God. Yes, therein do we realize the infinite givingness of God's love. When he gives without reservation. The infinite givingness. That's something we must see. It's not something that we read. It's not something that we hope for. It's not something that we walk around expecting. When we see the givingness of God, we rest. That's what you're after. If you're not resting right now, then seek. If you're not resting, then ask. If you're not resting, knock. For he said the door would be open. And he would give. The Father that seeth in secret will openly reveal himself. He will not necessarily open himself to the point to where, open you to the point to where people look and go, ooh, look, he's glowing. Ooh, look, that's God's talent. No. But you will be open. You will know. And you will know to look not at the things that people are speaking about, because what value do they have? None. Because the kingdom of God is never under attack. A thief can never, ever enter the kingdom and steal. A thief can never come in and put forth some type of proposition to God and fool him. And as I said in my sermon last week, the prince of this world is cast out. Don't you dare believe the prince of this world is the devil. Because God would never call the devil a prince. Think about it. He would never call him a prince, because the prince is in next in line for what? The throne, the king. He would never do that. So then who is he talking about? He's talking about you. You are the prince that is walking around carrying unfruitful desires and unfruitful errors and unfruitful thoughts. The abomination that sits on the throne, that's the prince. And Jesus is saying, now we cast him out. You cast him out through the love of God, overcoming the second death. When we arrive at the decision that we shall accept the invitation to seek the righteousness of God, we will set our course to satisfy ourselves with his likeness. We shall find truly that all is enough. God bless.